Hope you've enjoyed the morning, and we still have a lot of good information for you this afternoon. We're going to start with our next session, and I'm going to introduce Crystal Bell. She's served as family partner for the Bureau of Special Healthcare Needs as well as the active volunteer of Missouri Family to Family before joining the team full-time in November 2016. She's an active trained, sharing our strengths peer mentor and family leader within the Missouri Family to Family organization, as well as graduate of Missouri Developmental Disabilities Council's Partners in Policy Making program. That was a mouthful. She also provides family perspective on various state and national boards and committees. She's a lifelong learner whose education training span all life stages and domains and include training on rights law, tools of choice, and care, coordination, and advocacy. Through her extensive training and implementation of Charting the Life Course tools and framework, Crystal and her family have experienced the firsthand transformations that occur when an individual and their family are given the permission to dream. Ladies and gentlemen, Crystal Bell.
Well, like Doug said, my name is Crystal Bell, and I am the coordinator at Missouri Family to Family as well as part of the National Charting the Life Course team. I'll tell you just a little bit about the Charting the Life Course framework and kind of where it came from. But before I do, can I have a show of hands who has seen or heard of Charting the Life Course before today? Awesome. That's great. So Charting the Life Course, we'll go quick through the framework then. Charting the Life Course came out of Missouri Family to Family stakeholders meetings. And the Missouri Family to Family is housed at our USED, which stands for University Center in Excellence in Developmental Disabilities. For Kansas, your USED is KU. And we have been involved in national and policy systems change, and that's kind of where we focus a lot of our efforts. So recently, Charting the Life Course has kind of started to separate a little bit from Family to Family in its mission and what it's doing. And we just had our National Charting the Life Course Showcase yesterday, and we announced that we will have a Charting the Life Course Center, but it's going to be called Charting the Life Course Nexus. So it is the intersection where innovation and Charting the Life Course meet. So you should be seeing something about that pretty soon as well. There's a picture of my family. So I have 3 kids. Peyton is 15. He has Down syndrome and celiac disease. Connor he's going to be 14 and has autism and ADHD. And Lily will actually be 4 in a couple weeks. And she just decided to make herself special by being so darn cute. So that's kind of her claim to fame. In my training, most of it has been centered around empowering families. And providing that perspective, because so many times I think when organizations, government decide to make policies, they don't talk to the people those policies are going to affect. They mean very well and think that it's all going to play out a certain way, but it's very important for the people that are actually going to be participating in those programs and that funding. Have the input, and so that is another thing that I'm pretty passionate about is going in and saying, hey, this does not work for a family the way you thought it was. So I do that as well. A little bit about how Charting the Life Course really got started in 2012. There was a conference called the Wing Spread Conference. A bunch of state and national leaders got together and said, we want to change the way that we're supporting families. And out of that, a grant was issued, and there were 5 states, with Missouri being the mentor state, that were the first community of practice. A community of practice basically is a bunch of people that want to learn about the same thing and share with each other. They get together and kind of share ideas. So that was the community of practice. That was the basis of it. So those states would get together and they would talk about how they were using Charting the Life Course to make policy change, and change within their state to better support individuals and families. And after the 5-year grant was up, we had other states saying, hey, this sounds really cool and we want to be part of it too. So then at the next round, there were 17 states, and on July 1st, we'll be up to 20. So quite a few states. It's growing pretty rapidly. Charting the Life course is pretty much in every single state. So if the state is not formally a part of the community of practice, you can still find Charting the Life course throughout the country. Those were the original funders of the 5-year grant. So if we start thinking about how things are right now and with the current reality of our service and support system. So we have a lot of new challenges with our service and support system that we haven't had in the past. We have a declining workforce. How many people know about the DSP crisis, right? That's a buzzword now. We have some of our aging population is also going into that same kind of service system. The federal budget is always something that we're dealing with, right? We're asked to do more with less money. But if you look over on the left-hand side at the top, it talks about expectation, culture, and values. And really that is something that has changed dramatically in the past 20 years. So this is really the first group of individuals that have grown up with peers with disabilities right beside them. We have individuals that are included in all of our general education classrooms, in settings in their communities, and as they get to adulthood, we still expect that that's going to happen. I expect that my friends will have disabilities, will be of different sexual orientation, different color, speak different languages, and that culture and that expectation puts pressure on a system that they haven't experienced before. And when you think about that service system, if we look back before a formal service system was ever created, you have the person with the disability that existed within the context of their family and their community. They were naturally supported by their family, the family was supported by the community, but then families and individuals said, you know, we really need some formal services. We really need some help. And so the service system, with the best of intentions, started taking services and just wrapping them so tight around a person. And sometimes we actually even called them wraparound services. Now if you look at those four, I'll count right, look at the 4 circles, you can see that that green services circle is actually coming between the person and their family, and coming between the person, the family existing in their community. And so we met really well, but we started actually creating a situation that was in direct opposition to what we were wanting. So if you take a new model and are able to take the services and supports and place them throughout a person's life, you can see those 3 circles where the individual, once again, gets to exist within the context of their family and their community. So how do we actually go from that wraparound service system to one where we have integrated services and supports? And that is going to take a true transformational change. So how many people can remember when a service coordinator was then a support coordinator, was then a picket? We're just going to change the name. We're going to give them a few more pieces of paper to fill out. We might ask a few more questions. But we really didn't change how we thought. We didn't change how we operated, the questions that we asked, the conversations that we had. And that kind of change is transitional change. But really changing how we think and operate is that transformational change. And that is where you get the true shift in people being able to have good lives. All of this goes back to our core belief, and that's that all people have the right to live, love, work, play, and pursue their life aspirations in their community, just like everybody else. And if you look at that core belief, it says all people. It doesn't say all people with disabilities, all higher functioning, all people with medical needs. It says all people. And that is one of the guiding principles that Charting the Life course really tries to think about. We call this our all triangle. So if you look over on the left-hand side, it says 4.7 million people with developmental disabilities exist within the United States. Now, when we kind of break that down a little bit more, 1 in 4 are actually receiving state-paid DD services. So when I first looked at this, I thought, oh my gosh, that's 75% that are not getting services. But if you really start thinking about this triangle, you see that if 75% came knocking on a service systems door tomorrow, what would happen? Collapse, right? So the important thing, one, as researchers, that we look at within the 75% and we think about is maybe those people don't need services, or maybe they don't want services. But how are they still able to have a good life? Let's look at that and see what kind of supports that they have throughout their life that help them to have a good life. The other thing that's really important about this triangle concept, so the all triangle can be applied in many different ways. Is there anybody in here that's gone through the ambassador series that we offer? Awesome. So they know that you can apply the triangle to any type of situation, any group of people. So what that triangle tells you is when you're talking about funding a program or you're talking about increasing services, you're really only talking about affecting that 25% or the 1 in 4. So the triangle helps you to know that if we increase services, we're only getting to the 25%. It helps you to look at the whole picture and say, how are we affecting the all? And helps you kind of identify what your all is kind of what we call it. This is just Kansas's triangle, get my shapes right, triangle, and throughout the country, really, everyone's triangle looks pretty close to the same. We all have pretty much the same amount that we're serving, whether there's actually a wait list or it's just not talked about, it all kind of looks the same. Another thing that we really try to talk about is the person in the context of the family. So if you remember those 3 circles that we talked about with the person existing within that context of the family, when we think of family, so many times when you think of formally what families are, you say, who are you related to that's living with you, right? But how many of you have family members that at some point in time you wish you weren't related to them, right? I won't claim them, I'm not going to claim them right now. But when we're setting up plans, we say, okay, tell me about the people you're related to, tell me about the people that live in your home, and we don't stop to ask them and say, who do you want in your life? Who do you want supporting you? How many of us have friends that you consider them closer than any family that you have, right? So it's important that family be defined by the individual, that they get to say, I have this person that is going to be my rock and my support person, and they may not even be related or live with me or anything, that in their opinion and in their life, that person is support. So it's important to remember that. Also, that definition of family is fluid. Again, I might claim my sister one month, and the next month she is not involved in my life. So it's important that we're always looking at, where are you at now? Who do you want supporting you now? Another thing to think about is that lifelong impact of family on the individual. You know, a person doesn't exist within a vacuum, right? If you do something it affects the people that you live with. It affects other people in your family. And what your family does has also had an effect on you. Sometimes good, sometimes bad, right? So it's important to think about what kind of things are coming into play within the context of the family. So biologically, if we're looking at health, does your mom have diabetes? Does your dad have high blood pressure? What are we looking at as far as medically? When we think about family policy, so this one I think is a big one that gets left out a lot. Family policy is practices that you have within your family. So say that you, at Christmas, you always have ham. That is a family policy, that's a family practice that needs to be acknowledged. Maybe the family policy is as soon as you graduate high school, and you do graduate high school as your family policy, you're going to go to college. Every single person's gone to college. Grandpa went to college, Dad went to college, brothers and sisters go to college. That's the family policy. But yet when we have somebody with a disability, we say, well, we're going to get them supported employment. But within the context of their family, that's not the policy. So how are we helping them to participate in their family policy and participate in that family? Socially, a lot of times we have those expectation and our definition of what a good social circle is. And so we can come in and say, well, look, you only have 2 friends, so we got to get you some friends. But maybe within their family, the way their family operates, it is 1 or 2 very close friends. And so to walk in and say, we need to have get you a big social network, doesn't think about the context of family for that individual. And obviously, environmentally. People that grow up in rural areas can be very different than people that grow up in urban areas. So it's important to also remember that as well. And also talking about life stages and life cycles. So as a family, you kind of progress along a life cycle. So you have the person that's single, they get married, then you might have some kids, then everyone tries to launch them and they keep coming back, and you launch them again, but you go through those kind of stages, right? But families that have kids with disabilities, things look a little different sometimes. That launching doesn't always get to happen at the same time. Maybe you have parents that are aging and all of their friends, excuse me for the stereotype, are going to Florida to live. So how are we helping them to be part of that family life cycle? Maybe all of their friends are taking vacations. How are we helping make that happen? Another thing I think that's important to point out is if you look at those life stages, where do we spend most of our time? In adulthood, right? Yet we spend so much focus on birth, early childhood, school, maybe transition. And we're not really focusing on how are we preparing them for that adulthood part of the lifespan. The other thing that we talk about is the reciprocal roles. And there's a couple things about this slide that I think are really important. So if we look at caring about and caring for. So think about caring for, and after you're gone, and you're planning for somebody with a disability. Can you think of a couple things right offhand that can fill those needs in caring for, right? Day-to-day care, that's easy. We have an agency that can do that. Material financial, have a conservator. Advocate for support, we can have a guardian if you consider them to be an advocate. But if you look at the caring about and the things that are up there, those are the things that keep parents up at night. Those are the things that are probably the most difficult things to fulfill in someone's life. So when I think about when I'm gone, who is going to have that lifetime commitment to Peyton to say, hey, let's go watch a movie, because they know he likes watching movies. Or to tell Connor, let's go to a Lego convention. And they do it because they just love to hang out with them. Because why that's important is when the caring for falls apart, the people that are feeling the caring about pick up that slack. So when you have somebody that you say, well, they don't have any family, they don't have any friends, then your one job is to fill those caring about slots. Help them find somebody that has that lifetime commitment. The other thing about this is that so many times we take somebody with a disability and we're planning everything for them, you know, we're giving them supports, and we don't stop to think about the reciprocal roles, the role that they play in someone else's life. This became very clear to me when Peyton was real little. You know, we got first steps and we had therapists that came into the house, and everybody that came to the door was there to see Peyton. So the doorbell would ring and he'd perk up, oh, it's someone, it's for me. And one day, it wasn't for him. Somebody came to see me. And in typical Peyton style, he flops on the floor and starts screaming. And I thought, he thinks the world revolves around him, and he doesn't have a part to play in that world. And that's when I really started looking and saying, you know, people get a lifetime commitment to somebody, not necessarily just because they play a role in their lives, but that sure helps. It sure helps when you know somebody's playing a role in their lives. It can be that they always feed the cat while the neighbor's gone. It can be that they're always cheerful and they provide that uplift that the person needs in the day. So Jane St. John, one of my coworkers, has a son that has cerebral palsy. He's in his 30s, and he volunteers at the local fire station. And like many parents, she's looking for those supports for Ben. His name's Ben. And one day she said, well, you know, like, what do they get out of it? So she asked one of them, what do you get? And the fireman said, no matter how bad a call is, when we come back, Ben is always smiling. He's always happy. He helps us to get through those really bad calls. And so I really had to stop and think, what are my kids contributing to the relationships that they have in their lives? How can I help them to contribute more? And we can't forget the siblings. You know, siblings are often there for the whole lifespan. And somehow they get overlooked in the support that we give people. You know, now we call a lot of siblings the club sandwich generation, because we're taking care of siblings that have a disability, maybe taking care of aging parents and our own children. And so it's really important to also look at that. The person that is supporting the individual, how are we helping to support them as well? We also talk about good life vision and trajectory. So, don't give it away if you've done this before. Think about, take yourself out of a professional role, think about yourself as a person, and what a good life would mean for you. And you can call out the answers. What's a good life? Now or in the future?
A nice house to live in with protection.
A good house to live in with protection.
Meaningful work.
Meaningful work.
A family.
A family.
Doing something you love.
Doing something you love. Somebody to come check on you. So how many people agree with that self-advocate table that that is their vision for a good life? Yours. A nice house, a meaningful job, friends, family, a circle, people that care about you. Go ahead. Did you have an answer?
I do agree that is something you do want to have. You want to be, of course, you want to be independent, so you're going to want to have that circle, that circle. You don't want to completely isolate yourself from people.
Right.
Because you want people that are going to be there for you through hard times too.
Absolutely. And I think if we look at what our visions for a good life is, they might vary some. But overall, the core of it, we want friends. We want family. We want to be financially stable. We want to be able to make our own choices. But it's really funny when we start writing plans to help people have a good life, we lose sight of that vision. We start planning and making sure we're going to write a good plan. So let's see, we got to make sure that we have OT and we have PT and that we've authorized enough hours, PCA. We don't stop to think, how are we helping them have a good life? Do those services help them get there? Absolutely. But what is their vision of a good life? And stopping to ask them, what's their vision of a good life? Instead of just trying to write a good plan. Because I don't think I heard anybody out here say, my good life is a good plan. That I have funding, right? So, some people though, if you say, what is your good life? They look at you like you just stepped off a spaceship. Because for a lot of our families and individuals, they haven't been asked, they haven't been brought up to say, have a vision, have a dream. And so sometimes you have to start with saying, what don't you want? And think about those answers. How quick are those answers going to come? They know what they don't want. You know you don't want to be isolated. You know you don't want to be dependent on people, on a service system. You know that you don't want to live in a house that's falling apart. You know those things. So sometimes it's easier to start with that, what you don't want, and then flip it into what you do want. Another thing that I think is really important is these life experiences and life transitions. Now when I say transition, everybody starts thinking about that middle part that's pink. Transition from high school to the adult world, right? But if you think about it, there's transitions happening all through life. And how are we thinking about when we're going through the transitions that are coming up, how are we preparing for them? And how are we helping the family and the individual prepare for those transitions that are coming? Another thing that's really important is those life experiences. And we think about, think about what you did, what you were doing between the ages of 13 and 15. Okay? If you can throw your voice so nobody can identify you, call out a couple of things you were doing during those times. Come on, we got some honest people in here, for sure. Bonfires, okay?
Detention.
Cat show.
Detention.
Cat show for 4-H.
Awesome, cat show for 4-H. Youth group.
Smoking.
Smoking, all right. There we have somebody that's honest.
Watching people play video games with them.
Watching people play video games.
Shooting firecrackers at your loved ones.
There's another honest person. That's really what we're doing. So if you think about what happened, what you were doing between the ages of 13 and 15, you were doing what? Pushing boundaries, right? You were making mistakes. You were figuring out how comfortable you were in the back seat of that car with somebody of the opposite sex. You were experiencing consequences, right? What did you learn from all of those experiences? How to not get caught next time, right? But you learned life lessons. And so many times we're not looking at what are those typical life experiences that people are having, so they're learning those life lessons. We decide that we're going to build in a conversation into our OT and our PT and teaching somebody how to have a conversation. What happened to putting them in a room with 6 other kids, right? And so they're having those natural conversations. Or we decide that we're going to sit and we're going to work on sharing. But if we send them to daycare and somebody grabs a toy and they get hit back, they learn, right? Those are natural experiences, life experiences we need to be making sure people are having. Birthday parties. You learn things at birthday parties, right? That the world doesn't revolve around you. You don't get a present every time there's a birthday party. When you're babysitting, things like playing sports, so you're taking turns, learning to say no. Again, those boundaries. So I, as a mom with both my oldest boys having disabilities and not really being around other kids, I didn't know what that looked like. So I was the mom that would like go really slow and pick up line, and I'm like, what are those kids wearing? You know? And when something happens and there's an opportunity for the boys, I think, what are other 15-year-olds doing? Now, how we have those experiences might be a little different, but it's still important to have those life experiences. The other thing that's important is that dignity of risk. So, I say risk and I can just feel the whole room go, don't do that. With Peyton, I was going to be this really great parent, right? And I'm going to teach my children how to navigate their community. So I take them downtown Kansas City, and we have this little streetcar. It goes, you know, just a couple miles up and down. And we get in the streetcar, and we go down, and we have lunch, and we come back, and my office is across the street from where the streetcar comes. And I think, oh, first step, we did that. Next time, we'll try something else. You know, we'll go a little bit further. And then the next day, the boys are playing at my office, and we're having a meeting down at the end of the hall. And one of my coworkers comes in, and I said, oh, did you see Peyton and Connor down the hallway? She says, well, I saw Connor, but I'm sure Peyton's in your office. And I'm sitting here going, I don't know, something doesn't feel right. So after about 10 minutes or so, I walk down the hallway. No Peyton. I run through the whole 5th floor. No Peyton. We start searching the building. I go outside. Well, Peyton had decided that one time on the streetcar with Mom was enough, and now he knew how to navigate. So he gets on the streetcar, he rides down to one of the restaurants, and he decides he's going to have lunch. Meanwhile, I have KCPD and everyone else looking for Peyton. But when I saw him, you cannot replicate the pride that was on his face. He had gotten out of the office, he had gotten onto the streetcar, and gone down to actually the right stop for the restaurant that we were at the day before. Now, am I ready to give him that level of risk? No. But that was really important for his self-confidence and to give him that dignity to be able to have some risk. And it's scary to be able to do that. The other thing that often ends up happening is that we give people life sentences. So our director, Shelley, has a brother that has developmental disabilities, and when he was about 5 years old, he was going to play with some matches. Now, how many people know that 5-year-old boys like to burn everything up, right? So Eric gets these matches, and he's gonna hide, and so he gets in the closet, he's playing with these matches, and one of them lights on fire, and he thinks, oh crap, and he throws it down, he goes out and slams the door. And the closet goes up, and the fire department's called. And what happens at the next meeting? What's on his folder? Fire starter. Okay. At 10, what's on his folder? 15, 25. We take mistakes, and instead of saying, how do we learn from this typical life experience of making a bad decision on the internet, of putting things in your pocket, of trying to figure out, you know, if you like a boy or a girl. We take those typical life experiences and we make them life sentences. And I can tell you that I do not want to be labeled for the mistakes that I made when I was 19. I pretend they did not happen, and I wish everyone else would too, you know? And so I think it's really important to remember their typical life experiences. When Peyton was 12 and he started hitting the walls and yelling back at me and really being rebellious, I thought, I have got to get some behavioral supports in here. We have got to write some behavior goals, you know? And he was just being a boy. So again, now when I see behaviors, when I see things happen, when I see an attitude, I look and say, what are other 15-year-olds doing? Make sure I'm going. The other thing that we talk about is these life domains. So we kind of call these like our cocktail party, church barbecue questions. When you first meet somebody, what are some of the things that you start talking about?
How's your day?
How's your day? What was that?
Favorite.
Hobbies, okay. Where do you work? You're trying to learn about somebody, right? Where do you work? Maybe what social groups you belong to, who are your friends. You might talk about religion if you're in that safe space. As we get older, we're going to spend some time in that healthy living. We talk about all the ailments we have, right? But when we start thinking about a life for somebody with a disability, where is the domain that we go? Safety and security, right? That is our ultimate goal, is that they are safe and secure. But we don't stop to think about all those other things that make life colorful, that make life fun. Daily life and employment is not just about getting a job, it's about the other things that you do during the day. When we think about supports and we think about information, we like to talk about our 3 buckets. So people need information out of 3 categories. One of them is discovery and navigation. So it's really important that people have valid information, and more importantly, that you're empowering them to know where valid information comes from. When Peyton was first diagnosed, I went home. He was diagnosed in utero. I went home and I got on my dial-up at the time, and I Googled Down syndrome, and it did not look good. So when Peyton was born, what were my expectations? What I saw. I didn't know how to find good information. Connecting and networking. Again, if you say, my person doesn't have a family, my person doesn't have friends, your one job is to connect them. Because if you think about how isolating it is when you change from one life, one part of your life to another, so say you're single, you go out with your friends, you know, you might go to bars, you might go do things, and then you get married, and all your single friends are like, I don't know what you're talking about having to share a sink with somebody, right? And you get married and you can't relate with them, they can't relate with you. And then you have a baby and all your married friends are like, why do you have spit up on your shirt? They can't relate. So you either find a new group or you get a little isolated. And then you have a child that has special needs, And then the moms with all the other babies are like, why don't you come to playgroup? Why don't you do this? Why is your child not doing this? There's got to be something wrong. And it's even more isolating. And so it's really important to make sure that we are connecting people to the right people, connecting them to their peers as well. And then there's the goods and services. And I know this is the bucket that we all really worry about, is those goods and services, but it is really important that families and individuals know where to find those goods and services. This is probably my favorite Charting the Life course tool. It's the most versatile. Now I'm showing you tools, but the important thing to remember about Charting the Life course is that it's not about the tools and the pretty pictures. It's about the thinking. It's about the framework. You can use Charting the Life course if you never fill out a piece of paper, or if you never even say Charting the Life course. It's about how you're thinking. So there's 5 categories within the Charting or Integrated Support Star. There's personal strengths and assets, and that is what the person brings to the table. It could be financial, it could be a great personality. Technology is pretty obvious. The one thing to remember with technology is that you don't have to think big. It can be as simple as an electric toothbrush. Community-based. This is really important that you remember the difference with community-based. Now, community-based supports are supports that anyone can access in the community. So it's not paid services that happen in the community, it's that anyone can access. Relationships, who the person knows, and then eligibility support. So that's anything you have to qualify for. Some groups that we've talked to, a group of students said Pell Grants would be in eligibility because you have to fill out an application and qualify. So I talk about the framework and all these different moving pieces of Charting a Life course. But how does this fit in someone's life? So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about how I've used it in my life, how I've used it in my family's life, and kind of how it's changed things. So, it's not working. Houston, we have a problem. So, prior to using Charting the Life course, there we go. So prior to using Charting the Life course, this is what our star looked like. I was a single mom, and as soon as I got divorced with 2 kids with special needs, the service system said, "Welcome, what would you like?" And of course, in that time that was so hard, I said, "I need this, and I need this." And they said, "Oh, but there's this." And I was like, "Oh, I need that too." And I started getting all of these services, which I did need. And if you look, that eligibility specific part of our star is pretty darn full. Full to the point that I didn't need to have a social network. My kids' emergency contact at school was our paid staff. We did Special Olympics, which is great. We did specialized dentists. We did specialized baseball teams. We, this picture, this little boy, I don't even really know what his name is because this was the first time that we had met him, but I invited him to our, to Peyton's birthday party because he was the only kid I knew. He was our PCA's grandson. We didn't have a need for anything else because we had paid services. The only place we went was the movies, school, and church if I was just really on it. We didn't go anywhere else. We had what I would call an all-green life. So it's all in that green services. So I started working as a family partner. That program was contracted with UMKC, and I had a friend that started talking to me about Charting the Life course and about inclusion. And so, like any good parent, I decided that we would go from completely segregated to completely included. Didn't matter what it was, I wanted inclusion. And I was looking across the state, where can I find inclusion? Because I'm gonna go where those services and that inclusion is better. So I start looking up in Kansas City, and I start seeing, you know, some of the bigger school districts, and I think, gosh, they're progressive, and they know how to do inclusion. And before I left, you know, I was looking at all of the different services that we had, and I really didn't realize how much that would impact us. Because when you live on programs, you worry about, what if it doesn't get funded? So, right, all the moms get together and say, we're gonna write letters, and we're gonna go talk to our legislators, we're gonna make sure this program gets funded. And they worry, what if it doesn't? They worry, every job that I took, I said, well, what does it pay? Because I gotta make sure that I still qualify. Where will we have to live? Well, on Section 8 housing, you only have certain houses that you can choose. If my car broke down, I couldn't have a bunch of assets in the bank, so I was always worried about what if that happens. It even dictated who I dated. You know, if I found somebody that was doing really good, I thought, well, you know, it couldn't go anywhere, we couldn't get married because then we wouldn't qualify. What if my hours get cut? Are my kids bad enough? I didn't see that my entire life was ruled by fear. And so I move up to Kansas City and I say, well, you know what? It's gonna be okay because we're gonna get services and we're gonna be included. So we jet across the state. I'm like 4 months pregnant at the time. And the title of the book makes the picture. So positive behavior, yeah. So we go to the school and I walk in and I say, oh, I want inclusion. And we sit down at the IEP meeting and I look at his IEP and I'm like, there is less inclusion than we had way down in little old Poplar Bluff, Missouri. And I'm like, I thought you guys knew what I wanted. And we went back and forth and I left that meeting just completely defeated and upset. And I don't know where to go. And how many meetings, whether it be IEP meetings, ISP meetings, whatever, do you leave feeling like that, that you're just like this and nobody's understanding anyone or where you want to go? So my friend said, hey, you know that you're a family partner and you give this website out to everybody. Why don't you go home and try that? And I thought, well, I'm backed in a corner, I guess I will. So I went home and I filled out a trajectory for Peyton. So I went and I put in the good life that I thought would be for him. So friends, family, finding love, having a purpose, those kinds of things. And I took it back to the meeting and I said, I just want us to make sure that we're all on the same page. And so we looked at it, and yeah, okay. And they said, all right, fine. We will give you inclusion. You can have 10 minutes every morning in the special education classroom. And, you know, count your victories. So I walk out of there, yes, I have fought for inclusion. I am super advocate mom. And for 2 weeks, Peyton sat outside the door and refused to go in. And I thought, oh, this kid is going to kill me. But what I hadn't stopped to realize is when I was writing this vision of a good life, whose vision of a good life was it? It was mine. It wasn't Peyton. Peyton didn't want to be included in the general education classroom in the mornings. He wanted to be included in art and in PE. And one lesson that really taught me was that it's the individual and where they fit. So is total inclusion right for everyone? It's individual. Peyton has a mix, some segregation, some inclusion, and it's working wonderful for him. This is his portfolio now. I use this at every meeting, no matter what it is. We had a meeting because Peyton decided to run again, and I walked in and said, I don't care what we do. I will agree to it if you can show me where it's at on his trajectory. And can you imagine how easy those meetings go when you say it's right here, you know? And we ended up, he had a one-to-one, but it was line of sight only. So we were able to, without fighting, resolve that. Peyton also participates in his meetings now. Those first few meetings he wasn't in at all. And then he went to sitting in them, and now he participates. And if you look in the middle, if you can see that picture, it's him with the Chiefs cheerleader. And we've gotten to the point that's pretty much the only picture he points at now, and girls are part of his good life, so we need to make that happen, apparently. So that's his good life. So things have changed a lot since we did the initial Charting Life course folder and portfolio and working through things. And now Peyton is included in all kinds of things. I've had some great staff at the house. He goes rock climbing, he goes to the gym, he's gone to prom, and he's actually working at a coffee shop in the high school now that's called Common Grounds. And that's where he met his best friend. And this is just a short clip on what Common Grounds is, and one of the students that goes to that coffee shop. Maybe. Try this one.
Welcome to this edition of Spotlight. We are at Park Hill South High School with our principal, Dr. Dale Longnecker. And Dale, if I was a student at Park Hill South, I think I would live in the library because you have your own coffee shop this year. But it's more than just serving up a cup of joe.
This is a great atmosphere. Our students, the coffee shop is run by our essential skills students. Not only do they brew coffee, but they also are learning essential life skills.
Well, let's learn more about the coffee shop Gathering Grounds and how it's helping Panthers on both sides of the counter as we spotlight Park Hill South High School.
I come every day in the morning to work here. I like working here so I can serve coffee to customers.
We started on the coffee cart last year. We applied for a grant through the Park Hill Foundation, and that was granted to us. Also, Dr. Longnecker helped advocate for us to have this space here in the Media Center. And as of Thanksgiving, we opened up officially, and here we are.
I think it's a really innovative idea, and it branches the wants of like two different groups of people into one idea. So you have kids who are wanting like their caffeine fix in the morning and during tutorial, and you also have students eager for a chance to learn like life skills and responsibility. And I think that putting a coffee shop in the library is something that brings those two wants together.
When students come here, they work on utilizing the Apple Square system, taking the orders, deciding how much change to give back when an order is made, utilizing their food handlers' information that they learned, filling the orders, and just communicating with the customers as well as each other to fill those orders.
I wash my hands, put my apron on. Sometimes they hand me $2 bills, $5 bill, $10, or a $20 bill. Sometimes they do.
And so what do you have to do with that?
I had to press coffee. Then after that, I had $2. Then I get their change back.
It's taught me that I can be helping somebody with their future career, even if I'm just buying a cup of coffee in the morning. And sometimes I buy like coffee for my friends because, you know, like I think it's good to share like the love of like what this coffee shop has to offer. And so I think it's taught a lot of like responsibility within like helping out like fellow students here in Parkdale South.
Thinking about him working at the coffee shop, I said, but that's a segregated setting. He is working all with people with disabilities. And the more he worked there, the more people in the high school he knows. He has developed so many friendships and a community. And that community is what really keeps him safe. Right? Not the piece of paper that might be guardianship, but the community around him. So I used this with Connor as well, and I'm going to hurry up because now I'm mom. And he communicates much better than Peyton does, so I was able to use it for him to be able to communicate in his IEP meetings. And he's really taken this concept to heart because when he doesn't get to have a candy bar, he says, but you're supposed to be helping me live my good life. So he's got the concept down. The other thing it's given him is it's given him choice. Because when he doesn't want to do his homework, I say, that's fine, just tell me where it's at on your trajectory. And if that's the way you want to go, then there's your choice. So a lot of times we hear about, you know, before it was so bad and now we have Charting the Life course and now our life is good. Life's not like that, right? There are bumps, and what's great about the framework is that you go back to that way of thinking to get through those bumps. Connor recently had to go into a completely segregated school, and when I first looked at that, it was very difficult for me, especially doing what I do. And the only way, I told them, the only way that I will agree to this is if we have this trajectory. And the whole thing is that we are going here to get out. This is where we're going. And so the trajectory isn't always straight. When someone gets a job, things change. So it's not, I got them a job, we're done. How many of you are doing what you did for your first job? Right? Okay, we've got one person. Because things change. And so it's important to always be thinking about where are they going. We always want to be moving towards that good life. You can use these tools in all different ways, not just the way that they're printed. You can mark them up. For Peyton, if I ask him what his good life is, he's going to tell me pizza. He's going to tell me Ernie and cookie. So that can be part of his vision, right? I drew a line on there and said, okay, fine, we'll put Ernie, cookie, and pizza and girls on there, but then on the top half of it, I'm able to put the things that I know is going to help him be able to have pizza and maybe meet a girl. Those are the things that I can put up there. So you can adapt them and do them different ways. You see over on the left-hand side, that's a split star. So somebody drew a line down the middle and said, what do I have now and what do I need in the future? So they're very adaptable. So after I worked with the boys on their portfolio, I was sitting there thinking, where am I going? What am I doing? And as caregivers, you get lost in the shuffle sometimes, right? And you don't think about what's coming up next for you. And so I went and filled out the portfolio and wrote down things that in a dream world, what was my vision? And through doing that and always keeping that vision, I've gone from, our family has gone from being consumers, using all of those programs, eligibility services, to being able to give back. I actually have a 401k for the first time in my life. Those are the things it's given me, but it hasn't just given me a job. My job has given me a life. And, you know, we look at what is our goal? Our goal is that employment. Our goal is that paycheck. But it's so much bigger than the job. Through my job, I've been able to travel. I've been able to have a family of people that I work with that understand me. Understand when I say, Connor smashed somebody in the head with a laptop. They're like, yep, we know, right? People that get me. It's helped me to figure out who I was, who I am, and where I'm going. So even though we're at an employment summit, even though it's about getting a job, just like it's not about authorizing those services, it's about having a good life. How do we make that happen? And if you come to my breakout, I can tell you how we make that happen. So there's my email if you want to contact me. I really appreciate you guys letting me speak today and come and share. I'm doing the breakout right after this, and then I'm going to stick around for questions too. So thank you very much.